The bitter wind howled through the streets of Pinos Altos, New Mexico, carrying with it the promise of death for anyone foolish enough to be caught outside without proper shelter. And Rebecca Zimmerman stumbled through the snow with nothing but the thin cotton dress she had been wearing when her father slammed the door in her face. Her feet had gone numb an hour ago, maybe longer. Time had lost all meaning in the whiteout conditions that transformed the familiar mining town into an alien landscape of frozen terror. Rebecca's dark hair, once pinned neatly at the nape of her neck, now hung in icy strands across her face. Each breath burned her lungs, and her limbs felt impossibly heavy. She had stopped shivering, which some distant part of her mind recognized as a very bad sign. The argument with her father played over and over in her mind like a twisted music box. She had refused to marry Martin Schneider, the wealthy mine owner twice her age who had been courting her with her father's enthusiastic blessing. At 20 years old, Rebecca had thought she deserved some say in whom she would spend her life with, but her father had other ideas. When she had stood firm in her refusal that morning, declaring she would rather die an old maid than marry a man she did not love, her father's face had turned purple with rage. "You ungrateful girl," he had spat, his German accent thickening with anger. "I give you everything and you throw it back in my face. You want to make your own choices. Fine. Get out. Get out of my house and see how long you last without me." She had thought he was bluffing, that he would call her back before she reached the end of the street. But the door had remained shut, and the snow had begun falling harder. That had been hours ago, and night was approaching fast. Rebecca knew she was dying. Her legs finally gave out, and she crumpled into a snowdrift beside what she thought might be the road leading out of town. The cold did not hurt anymore. In fact, she felt almost warm now, which struck her as funny in a detached sort of way. She closed her eyes. The sound of hoofbeats penetrated her fading consciousness. Rebecca tried to open her eyes, but her lashes were frozen together. Strong hands grabbed her shoulders and a voice cut through the wind. "Jesus Christ, there is someone out here." More sounds, urgent and close. Then warmth, sudden and shocking as heavy wool enveloped her body. Someone was lifting her, cradling her against a chest that radiated heat like a stove. Rebecca wanted to protest, to say something, but her jaw would not cooperate. "Stay with me now," the voice commanded. It was a man's voice, young and rough with panic. "Come on, stay awake. Do not you dare die on me." Rebecca felt herself being placed on a horse, felt the man climb up behind her and pull her back against him. His arms came around her, holding her secure, and the horse began to move. The motion should have been jarring, but she barely registered it. The coat around her smelled like leather and smoke and something else, something distinctly masculine and not unpleasant. "There is a lined shack about a mile from here," the man was saying, though Rebecca could not tell if he was talking to her or to himself. "We will get you warm. You are going to be fine. You hear me? You are going to be fine." Rebecca tried to respond but managed only a small sound that might have been agreement or might have been nothing at all. Consciousness slipped away from her like water through her fingers. When awareness returned, Rebecca found herself in a small cabin lying near a roaring fire. Her wet dress had been removed, and she was wrapped in several thick blankets. The man who had found her was crouched beside the fireplace, feeding more wood into the flames. In the flickering light, she could make out a strong profile, a jaw shadowed with several days' worth of stubble, and dark hair that curled slightly at the ends where it touched his collar. "You are awake," he said, turning to look at her. His eyes were a striking shade of blue-gray like storm clouds. "How do you feel?" "Cold," Rebecca managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "So cold." "That is actually a good sign," he said, moving closer. Means your body is starting to warm up. You gave me one hell of a scare out there. I almost did not see you in the snow." He reached out and pressed the back of his hand against her forehead, then her cheek. The touch was gentle, clinical, but Rebecca felt heat rush to her face that had nothing to do with the fire. "What is your name?" he asked. "Rebecca. Rebecca Zimmerman." Recognition flashed across his face. "The banker's daughter. What in God's name were you doing out in a blizzard with nothing but a summer dress?" The memory came flooding back, and with it a wave of despair so intense it made her chest ache. "My father threw me out. I refused to marry the man he chose, and he threw me out." The cowboy's expression darkened. "He threw you out? In this weather?" Rebecca nodded, feeling tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back fiercely. She had been raised to be strong, to never show weakness, but the events of the day had stripped away all her carefully constructed defenses. "That is murder," the cowboy said flatly. "He had to know you would not survive." "I think he thought I would come crawling back," Rebecca admitted. "Begging for forgiveness, agreeing to do whatever he wanted. And you did not." "I would rather die," Rebecca said, the words coming out fiercer than she intended. "I would rather freeze to death than marry a man I do not love for money." Something shifted in the cowboy's expression, a respect that had not been there before. "Well, you almost got your wish. Another 30 minutes and I would have been too late." "Thank you," Rebecca said softly. "You saved my life. I do not even know your name." "Harrison Pritchard," he said, settling back on his heels. "Most folks call me Harry. I work for the Double T Ranch about 15 miles south of here. Was heading back when the storm hit and decided to wait it out in this lined shack." "Providence," Rebecca murmured. "Maybe," Harry agreed. "Or maybe just dumb luck. Either way, I am glad I found you." He stood and moved to a small table in the corner where supplies were stored. Rebecca watched him work, noting the easy confidence in his movements. He was tall, probably just over 6 feet, with the lean, muscular build of a man who spent his days doing hard physical labor. His clothes were worn but clean, and he moved with a grace that suggested he was comfortable in his own skin. "Are you hungry?" he asked, pulling out some jerky and hardtack. "It is not much, but it will keep you going until the storm breaks." Rebecca realized she was starving. "Yes, please." Harry brought the food over, then poured water from a canteen into a tin cup. "Drink slowly," he cautioned. "Your body is still in shock." Rebecca obeyed, taking small sips while Harry settled across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. The silence between them was not uncomfortable, but Rebecca felt the need to fill it. "How old are you?" she asked, then immediately felt foolish. It was a child's question, but Harry did not seem to mind. 23, he said. "Been working ranches since I was 14. You?" 20. "As of last month." "Happy birthday," Harry said with a small smile that transformed his serious face into something approaching handsome. "Hell of a way to celebrate." Rebecca laughed, surprised that she still could. "Not exactly what I had planned." "What did you have planned?" Harry asked. "Before all this, I mean. What did you want?" It was a good question, one Rebecca had not really let herself consider. Her life had been so carefully mapped out by her father that her own wants and dreams had seemed irrelevant. "I wanted to teach," she said slowly. "There is a small schoolhouse in town, and the teacher, Miss Porter, she has been letting me help sometimes. I love it. The children, watching them learn and grow, it makes me feel useful, like I am doing something that matters." "That sounds nice," Harry said. "Better than marrying some old man for his money anyway." "My father did not see it that way. He said teaching was beneath our family's station. That I was meant for better things." "Better things," Harry repeated, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Like being some rich man's trophy wife. Yeah, that sounds real fulfilling." Rebecca studied him in the firelight. You do not think much of wealthy men. I think wealth does not make a man good or bad, Harry said carefully. But I have seen plenty of rich men who think their money gives them the right to treat people like property. Your father sounds like one of them. He was not always like this, Rebecca said softly. My mother died when I was 12. Fever took her in less than a week. After that, father changed. He became obsessed with money, with status. It was like he thought if he could just climb high enough, be important enough, the pain would not matter anymore. Did it work? No, Rebecca said. It just made him cruel. The wind howled outside, rattling the shutters. Harry stood and checked the door, making sure it was secure, then added more wood to the fire. The small cabin was growing warmer, and Rebecca could feel sensation returning to her fingers and toes. With it came pain, a burning prickling that made her gasp. I know it hurts, Harry said, returning to her side. But it means you are not getting frostbite. That is good. You were lucky. Lucky, Rebecca repeated. I do not feel very lucky right now. You are alive, Harry pointed out. That is more than you would have been if I had not come along. Sometimes you have to take what you can get. There was something in his tone that made Rebecca think he was speaking from experience. What brought you to New Mexico? She asked. You do not sound like you are from around here. Missouri, originally, Harry said. Left home when I was 14 after my father drank himself to death. My mother had already passed, and there was nothing keeping me there. I worked my way west, taking whatever jobs I could find. Ended up at the Double T about 3 years ago and been there ever since. You like it? The ranch work, Harry considered the question. It is honest work, hard but honest. I like being outside working with the animals. The boss, Tom Thatcher, he is a fair man, treats his workers right. That is more than a lot of men can say. Do you ever think about doing something else? Sometimes, Harry admitted. I have been saving my pay, thinking maybe someday I could buy a small piece of land, start my own spread. Nothing fancy, just enough to run some cattle, maybe a few horses. Be my own boss, you know? Rebecca did know. The desire for independence, for the freedom to make your own choices, was something she understood all too well. That sounds wonderful, she said sincerely. They talked through the night as the storm raged outside. Harry told her about life on the ranch, about the vast open spaces of New Mexico, about the cattle drives and the wild horses that still roamed the mountains. Rebecca told him about her childhood, about her mother's kindness and her father's gradual descent into bitterness. They talked about books they had read, places they wanted to see, dreams they were afraid to voice out loud. As dawn broke, pale and gray through the shuttered windows, the wind finally began to die down. Harry opened the door and stepped outside, returning a moment later with snow in his hair and a thoughtful expression. Storm is breaking, he said. We should be able to head out in a few hours once the worst of it passes. Reality came crashing back. Where will I go? Rebecca asked and hated how small her voice sounded. I cannot go back to my father's house. Even if I wanted to, he made it clear I am not welcome there. Harry was quiet for a long moment. You could come to the ranch, he finally said. Mrs. Thatcher, the boss's wife. She is always looking for help with the cooking and cleaning. It would not be easy work and the pay would not be much, but you would have a place to stay, food to eat. It would give you time to figure out what you want to do next. Hope, fragile and tentative, bloomed in Rebecca's chest. Do you really think she would take me in? I think she would, Harry said. She is a good woman, Mrs. Thatcher, kind, and she does not hold with the way some men treat women like they are property to be bought and sold. She will give you a fair chance. I do not know how to thank you, Rebecca said, her voice thick with emotion. You saved my life, and now you are offering me a future. I have done nothing to deserve such kindness. Harry looked uncomfortable with the praise. "You do not need to deserve kindness," he said gruffly. "It should not be something you have to earn. Besides, I could not very well save you from freezing just to leave you with nowhere to go. That would not make much sense." Rebecca smiled despite everything. There was something endearing about his practical approach to heroism, as if saving lives was just another task to be completed thoroughly and well. They waited until mid-morning for the snow to stop completely before setting out. Rebecca's dress had dried by the fire, though it was wrinkled and stained. Harry had no other clothes to offer her, but he insisted she keep his heavy wool coat. Underneath, he wore a thick flannel shirt that he claimed was warm enough. "I have been through worse weather with less," he assured her when she protested. "You need it more than I do." The ride to the Double T Ranch took most of the day. Harry's horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Copper, carried them both without complaint, though Harry kept the pace slow and steady to avoid tiring the animal. Rebecca sat in front of Harry, his arms on either side of her as he held the reins. It was improper, scandalously so, but there was no help for it. She tried not to think about how aware she was of his presence, of the solid warmth of his chest against her back, of the strength in the arms that kept her secure. The landscape was transformed by the snow, familiar landmarks buried under white drifts. Harry navigated with the confidence of someone who knew the land intimately, pointing out features that Rebecca would have missed entirely. "That is where the creek runs in the summer," he said, gesturing to a depression in the snow. "And that stand of cottonwoods marks the northern boundary of the ranch. We are almost there." The Double T Ranch house appeared as they crested a low hill, a sturdy structure of logs and stone with smoke rising from two chimneys. Outbuildings dotted the surrounding area, including a large barn, several corrals, and what looked like a bunkhouse. Despite the recent storm, the place had an air of prosperity and careful management. As they rode into the yard, a man emerged from the barn. He was in his 40s, Rebecca guessed, with graying hair and a weather-beaten face that split into a grin when he saw Harry. "Harrison Pritchard, where the hell have you been?" he called out. "We have been worried sick. Storm came up so fast we thought you might have gotten caught in it." "I did get caught in it," Harry said, dismounting and then helping Rebecca down. Her legs nearly gave out, stiff from the long ride, and Harry steadied her with a hand on her elbow. Took shelter in the line shack up by Pinos Altos. Found someone who needed help. The man's eyes shifted to Rebecca, taking in her rumpled dress and borrowed coat, and his expression grew serious. "I see. You had better come inside and warm up, both of you. Mary will want to hear about this." They followed him into the house, where warmth and the smell of cooking food enveloped them like an embrace. A woman emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 5 years younger than her husband, with kind eyes and graying brown hair pulled back in a practical bun. "Harry, thank God you are safe," she said, then noticed Rebecca. "And who is this?" "Mrs. Thatcher, this is Rebecca Zimmerman," Harry said. "I found her outside Pinos Altos yesterday, caught in the storm. Her father threw her out of the house." Mrs. Thatcher's expression transformed from curiosity to outrage in an instant. "He did what?" "Threw me out because I refused to marry the man he chose for me," Rebecca said, deciding that honesty was the best approach. "Mr. Pritchard saved my life. I would have frozen to death if he had not found me. Mrs. Thatcher looked at her husband, and some silent communication passed between them. Then she turned back to Rebecca and took both her hands. "You poor dear. Come, let us get you cleaned up and into some proper clothes. Tom, Harry, give us some privacy." The men retreated, and Mrs. Thatcher led Rebecca upstairs to a small but comfortable bedroom. She produced a dress that was slightly too large but clean and warm, along with proper undergarments and thick wool stockings. As Rebecca changed, Mrs. Thatcher bustled about, heating water for washing and laying out towels. "I hope you do not mind me saying so," she said as Rebecca washed her face and hands, "but your father is a fool. No man worth having would force his daughter into a loveless marriage, and no amount of money is worth your happiness." "Thank you," Rebecca said, surprised by the fierce support from this woman who had known her for less than an hour. "Harry thought you might have worked for me here. I know it is a lot to ask, taking in a stranger, but I promise I am a hard worker. I will earn my keep." "Harry has good instincts about people," Mrs. Thatcher said. "If he brought you here, that is recommendation enough for me. As it happens, I could use help. This ranch keeps me busy from dawn to dusk, and I am not getting any younger. If you are willing to work, you have a place here for as long as you need it." Relief washed over Rebecca so intensely it made her dizzy. "Thank you. I do not know how I will ever repay your kindness." "No repayment necessary," Mrs. Thatcher said firmly. "We take care of our own here, and anyone Harry brings home is one of ours. Now, come downstairs and get some proper food in you. You look like you have not eaten in days." The kitchen was warm and inviting, with a large table that could seat a dozen people. Mr. Thatcher and Harry were already there, along with 3 other men who Mrs. Thatcher introduced as ranch hands. They all nodded politely to Rebecca, but she noticed the curious glances they shot between her and Harry. The meal was simple but delicious: beef stew with fresh bread and butter. Rebecca ate slowly, mindful of Harry's earlier warning about going easy on her system, but she could have wept at how good it tasted. The conversation flowed around her, talk of the storm and its impact on the ranch, of cattle that would need to be checked and fences that might have been damaged. After the meal, Mr. Thatcher stood and cleared his throat. "Rebecca, I want you to know you are welcome here. Mary tells me you will be helping her around the house, which is a load off my mind. She has been working herself too hard. We will provide room and board, plus $5 a month in wages. If that sounds fair to you, we would be pleased to have you stay." $5 a month was not much, but it was more than Rebecca had expected. "That is more than fair," she said. "Thank you, Mr. Thatcher." "I will work hard, I promise." "I am sure you will," he said with a smile, "and call me Tom. We do not stand on ceremony here." The days that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Rebecca threw herself into her work with determination, learning the routines of the ranch house. She helped Mrs. Thatcher, who insisted on being called Mary, with cooking and cleaning, mending and washing. The work was harder than anything she had done in her father's house, but it was also more satisfying. There was something deeply fulfilling about seeing the tangible results of her labor, about knowing she was earning her place through her own efforts. Harry was often around the main house, taking his meals there with the other hands or stopping by to discuss ranch business with Tom. Rebecca found herself watching for him, her heart lifting whenever she heard his voice or caught a glimpse of him through the window. They fell into the habit of talking after dinner, stepping out onto the porch despite the cold to steal a few moments of privacy. "How are you settling in?" Harry asked one evening about a week after Rebecca's arrival. "Well, I think," Rebecca said. "Mary is wonderful to work with, patient and kind. I am learning so much." "You look happy," Harry observed. "Happier than when I found you anyway." "I am happy," Rebecca said, realizing it was true. "For the first time in years, I feel like I am living my own life, making my own choices. It is terrifying and exhilarating all at once." "I know that feeling," Harry said softly. "When I left Missouri, I was scared out of my mind, but I was also free. It was worth the fear." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the clear winter sky. Rebecca was acutely aware of Harry beside her, of the way her body seemed to lean toward him without conscious thought. She had never felt this way about anyone before, this magnetic pull that seemed to intensify every time they were together. "Rebecca," Harry said suddenly, his voice rough. "I need to tell you something." Her heart started pounding. "What is it?" "I have been thinking about you, a lot. More than I should, probably. And I know this is complicated. You have been through hell and you are just starting to find your footing. The last thing you need is some cowboy complicating things by developing feelings for you." Rebecca's breath caught. Feelings. Harry turned to face her fully, his expression intense in the starlight. "I cannot stop thinking about you. From the moment I found you in that snow, something in me just knew. I know it is crazy. We barely know each other, but I have never felt this way about anyone, and I had to tell you. Even if you do not feel the same way, even if it is too soon, I had to be honest." Rebecca's heart was racing so fast she thought it might burst from her chest. "It is not too soon," she whispered. "And you are not crazy. I feel it too. I have been trying to ignore it, trying to tell myself it is just gratitude or the aftermath of trauma, but it is more than that. When I am with you, I feel safe. I feel seen. I feel like myself." Harry reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she did not, his hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing over her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. "Can I kiss you?" "Yes," Rebecca breathed, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was soft and tentative at first, a question and an answer all at once. Then Rebecca's hands came up to grip his shirt, pulling him closer, and the kiss deepened into something that made her toes curl in her boots. Harry's arms came around her, holding her like she was precious, like she was something worth protecting. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Rebecca felt tears on her cheeks. "Are you okay?" Harry asked, alarm in his voice. "Did I push too far?" "No," Rebecca said quickly. "No, I am just happy, so incredibly happy. I did not know I could feel this way." Harry pulled her close again, tucking her head under his chin. "We will take this slow," he promised. "No rushing, no pressure. I want to do this right." And he did. Over the following weeks, as winter gradually loosened its grip on the land, Harry courted Rebecca with a patience and tenderness that made her fall more deeply in love with him every day. He brought her wildflowers when the first blooms appeared in the meadows. He taught her to ride, patiently coaching her through her fear until she could sit a horse with confidence. They took long walks in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's dreams and fears and hopes. Mary watched their growing relationship with approval. "That boy has been alone too long," she told Rebecca one afternoon as they kneaded bread together. "He needed someone like you, someone strong and brave enough to match him." "I am not brave," Rebecca protested. "I was thrown out by my father and nearly died. That is not bravery." "You refused to compromise your principles even when it cost you everything," Mary corrected. "You chose freedom over security, integrity over comfort. If that is not bravery, I do not know what is." Spring arrived properly in late March, transforming the landscape into a riot of green and gold. Rebecca had been at the ranch for 3 months, and it felt more like home than anywhere she had lived before. She had written to Miss Porter, the teacher in Pinos Altos, explaining what had happened and asking if there might still be a position for her. Miss Porter had written back with enthusiasm, saying the school board had approved hiring an assistant teacher, and the job was Rebecca's if she wanted it. Rebecca should have been thrilled, but instead she felt torn. Teaching was her dream, but it would mean moving back to Pinos Altos, away from the ranch, away from Harry. She did not know what to do. She was wrestling with this dilemma one evening when Harry found her sitting by the creek that ran through the ranch property. He settled beside her on the grass, not speaking at first, just being there. "What is wrong?" he finally asked. "You have been distracted all day." Rebecca told him about the letter, about the teaching position. "I do not know what to do," she admitted. "This is everything I wanted, but the thought of leaving here, leaving you, it makes my chest hurt." Harry was quiet for a long moment. "What if you did not have to choose?" he said slowly. "What do you mean? What if you could teach and still be here? Pinos Altos is only 15 miles away. That is a manageable ride, especially in good weather. And in winter, when the roads are bad, you could stay in town during the week and come home on weekends." "Home," Rebecca repeated softly. "You think of the ranch as home for me." "I hope it is," Harry said. "I hope you want to stay." "Because I want to be wherever you are, Rebecca. I love you. I have loved you since I wrapped you in my coat and promised myself I would not let you die. I know 3 months is not very long, but I know what I feel. I want to spend my life with you if you will have me." Rebecca's vision blurred with tears. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "Yes," Harry said simply. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple gold band with a tiny chip of turquoise set in the center. "It is not much. I know it is not what you could have had if you had married that mine owner your father wanted, but it is honest and it is given with all my heart. Will you marry me, Rebecca?" "Yes," Rebecca said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, of course I will marry you. I love you, Harry. I love your kindness and your strength and the way you see me for who I really am. I do not want a big fancy ring or a wealthy husband. I just want you." Harry slipped the ring onto her finger, and then he was kissing her with a passion that made the world spin. When they finally returned to the house, hand in hand, Mary took one look at their faces and burst into delighted laughter. "Finally," she said. "Tom, you owe me $5. I told you he would propose before April." The wedding took place in early May, a small ceremony attended by the ranch hands, a few neighbors, and Miss Porter from the school. Rebecca wore a simple white dress that Mary had helped her sew, and wildflowers in her hair. Harry wore his best clothes, freshly cleaned and pressed, and looked so handsome that Rebecca could barely breathe when she saw him waiting for her. They spoke their vows under the cottonwood trees by the creek, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives. When the circuit preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Harry kissed Rebecca with such joy that everyone cheered. The celebration lasted into the night, with food and music and dancing. Rebecca danced with Harry, with Tom, with all the ranch hands who had become her friends. She was happier than she had ever been, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about her, married to a man she loved with all her heart. As the party wound down and the guests departed, Harry led Rebecca to a small cabin that Tom had helped him fix up over the past few weeks. It was simple but sturdy, with a good fireplace and a large window that looked out over the valley. Harry had furnished it with a bed, a table, some chairs, and several shelves for books. "It is ours," he said, watching Rebecca's face as she took it all in. "Tom is giving me a piece of land as a wedding gift, 5 acres to start. It is not much, but it is a beginning. We can build from here." Rebecca turned to him, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "It is perfect. You are perfect. This whole day has been perfect." Harry pulled her close, his hand tangling in her hair. "I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me," he promised. "I could never regret it," Rebecca whispered. "You saved me, Harry, in every way a person can be saved." Their first night as husband and wife was tender and sweet, a discovery of each other that left them both breathless and amazed. Rebecca had been nervous, knowing only what the other women had whispered about in careful euphemisms. But Harry was patient and gentle, making sure she felt safe and cherished every moment. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the darkness, Harry traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. Happier than I knew it was possible to be, Rebecca replied honestly. When my father threw me out, I thought my life was over. I thought I had nothing left, but I was wrong. That was not the end. It was the beginning. The beginning of the life I was always meant to have. Rebecca started teaching at the Pinos Altos school the following week, riding into town each morning and returning in the evening. The children were a delight, eager and curious, and Rebecca discovered she had a gift for making even the most difficult subjects seem interesting. Miss Porter was a wonderful mentor, teaching Rebecca the practical skills of managing a classroom while encouraging her natural enthusiasm. The work was exhausting, balancing teaching with helping Mary at the ranch and managing her own small household, but Rebecca had never felt more fulfilled. She was using her mind, contributing to her community, and building a life with the man she loved. Every evening when she returned home, Harry would be waiting, ready to hear about her day and share his own news from the ranch. Summer arrived hot and dry, and Harry spent long days working cattle and mending fences. Rebecca worried about him, about the toll the physical labor took on his body, but he always waved off her concerns with a smile. "This is what I do," he would say. "Besides, I am working towards something now, our future. That makes all the difference." By autumn, Rebecca realized she was pregnant. She told Harry one evening as they sat on the porch of their cabin, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. "A baby," Harry repeated, his voice full of wonder. "We are going to have a baby." "Yes," Rebecca said, laughing at his expression. "In the spring, Mary thinks." Around April or May, Harry let out a whoop of joy and swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she was dizzy and laughing. "We are going to be parents," he said, setting her down and pressing his hand gently against her still flat stomach. "I am going to be a father. Are you happy?" Rebecca asked, suddenly nervous. "I know we have not been married very long and money is tight." "Happy?" Harry pulled her close, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Rebecca, I am more than happy. I am honored, awed, terrified, but mostly just grateful. A year ago, I was alone, wondering if I would ever find someone to share my life with. Now I have you, and soon we will have a child. How could I be anything but happy?" The pregnancy was easier than Rebecca had feared, thanks to Mary's experienced guidance. She continued teaching through the autumn and into early winter, finally stopping when the cold weather and her growing belly made the daily ride too difficult. She spent the last months of her pregnancy helping Mary with the lighter household tasks and preparing for the baby's arrival. Harry became even more protective, fussing over her in a way that was both annoying and endearing. He built a cradle with his own hands, sanding it until it was smooth as silk so there would be no chance of splinters. He helped Rebecca sew tiny clothes and blankets, his large hands surprisingly deft with needle and thread. The baby arrived on a warm April evening, exactly 1 year after Harry and Rebecca's wedding. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Rebecca thought she could not endure another minute. But Mary was there, calm and encouraging, and Harry held her hand through it all, whispering words of love and support. When the baby finally arrived, a healthy boy with a shock of dark hair and his father's blue-gray eyes, Rebecca felt a love so fierce and immediate it took her breath away. Harry held his son with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." What should we name him? They had discussed names but never settled on one. Looking at her son, at the tiny miracle she and Harry had created, Rebecca knew exactly what felt right. "Thomas," she said, "after Tom Thatcher. If he had not taken me in, given me a place to stay, we might never have had this chance." "Thomas Pritchard," Harry said, testing the name. "I like it." Tom is going to be insufferable when he finds out, though. Mary will never hear the end of it." They laughed together, exhausted and happy, as their son slept peacefully in Harry's arms. Tom and Mary were indeed delighted by the baby's name, and Tom proved Harry right by telling everyone they met about his namesake. Little Thomas became the darling of the ranch, passed from one pair of loving arms to another. He was a happy baby, quick to smile and slow to fuss, and he thrived in the warmth and security of his extended family. Rebecca returned to teaching when Thomas was 6 months old, bringing him with her to the school. The children were enchanted by the baby, and having him, there became an unexpected teaching tool as Rebecca incorporated lessons about child development and family responsibility into the curriculum. The years passed in a blur of joy and hard work. Harry continued working for the Double T, but he also began building up his own small herd on the 5 acres Tom had given them. He had a gift for working with horses, and word spread about his skill at breaking and training. Soon people were bringing him their most difficult animals, paying good money for his expertise. When Thomas was 3, Rebecca found herself pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, as if her body remembered what to do. Their daughter arrived in the autumn, a tiny perfect girl with Rebecca's dark hair and Harry's stubborn chin. "What about Ruth?" Harry suggested, holding his daughter with the same wonder he had shown with Thomas. "It means companion, friend. That is what you are to me, Rebecca." "My companion in all things. Ruth Pritchard," Rebecca said, smiling. "It is beautiful. Hello, little Ruth. Welcome to our family." Life settled into a comfortable pattern. Harry and Rebecca raised their children with love and laughter, teaching them the values of hard work, honesty, and kindness. Thomas grew into a bright, curious boy who loved the ranch and everything about it. Ruth was more thoughtful, often found with her nose in a book, but she had a quiet strength that reminded Harry of her mother. When Thomas was 10 and Ruth was 7, Tom Thatcher called Harry into his office one spring morning. Tom was in his 60s now, his hair completely gray, but his eyes were still sharp. "I am getting old, Harry," Tom said without preamble. "Mary and I have been talking, and we have decided it is time to start thinking about the future of this ranch. We never had children of our own, as you know. This place has been our life's work, and we want to see it continue after we are gone." Harry waited, not sure where this was going. "We want to sell you half the ranch," Tom continued. "You have been with us for 13 years now, and you have proven yourself 100 times over. You are like a son to us, Harry. You and Rebecca both. We want you to be partners, help us run this place. And when Mary and I are gone, it will be yours. Yours and Rebecca's and your children's." Harry was stunned. "Tom, I do not have that kind of money. Even selling everything I own, I could not afford half of this ranch." "We are not asking for market value," Tom said with a smile. "We are asking for a fair price that you can afford. We have worked it all out with the bank. You would make payments over 10 years. By the end of that time, the ranch would be half yours. Then when we pass, the other half transfers to you. It is all legal and proper." We had a lawyer draw up the papers. Harry felt emotion clog his throat. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because you are family," Tom said simply. "Because you and Rebecca have brought joy into our lives we never expected to have. Because I trust you to take care of this land and the people on it. Because it is the right thing to do." Harry had to wipe his eyes before he could respond. "I do not know what to say. Thank you seems inadequate." "Then do not say anything," Tom said, standing and offering his hand. "Just say you will do it. Be my partner. Help me keep this ranch running strong." Harry shook his hand firmly. "Yes, absolutely yes." Rebecca was overjoyed when Harry told her the news. They celebrated that night with Tom and Mary, toasting to their partnership and their future. It felt like a dream, the culmination of everything they had been working toward. The next few years were busy, as Harry took on more responsibility for running the ranch. He had a natural talent for management, able to balance the needs of the animals, the land, and the workers. Under his and Tom's joint leadership, the Double T prospered, weathering droughts and hard winters with careful planning and hard work. Rebecca continued teaching, becoming increasingly involved in the wider community. She started a small library in Pinos Altos, organizing book drives and fundraisers. She advocated for better school facilities and higher teacher pay. She became known as someone who would stand up for what was right, even when it was unpopular. Their children grew strong and healthy. Thomas, at 16, was already working full-time on the ranch, showing the same gift for animal husbandry that his father possessed. Ruth, at 13, was the top student in Rebecca's school and dreamed of becoming a doctor, an ambition that both Harry and Rebecca supported wholeheartedly, despite the challenges she would face as a woman in medicine. Tom Thatcher passed away quietly in his sleep one winter night when he was 68 years old. The entire community mourned the loss of a good man. Mary grieved deeply but found comfort in Harry and Rebecca's family, spending most of her time at their cabin, helping with the children and the household. Tom always said he wanted to go quick when his time came, she told them. He did not want to be a burden, did not want to suffer. I am grateful he got his wish, even though I miss him every moment. Mary lived for another 5 years, long enough to see Thomas marry a sweet girl from town and welcome her first great-grandchild into the world. She passed peacefully with Harry and Rebecca at her side, her last words a whispered thank you. With Mary's death, the ranch became fully Harry and Rebecca's. They ran it with the same care and dedication Tom and Mary had shown, treating their workers fairly and managing the land responsibly. The Double T became known as one of the best-run ranches in New Mexico, and Harry's reputation as a horseman spread throughout the territory. Rebecca eventually retired from teaching when she was in her 50s, but she remained active in the community, mentoring young teachers and continuing to champion education. She and Harry grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. They never saw or heard from Rebecca's father again. She learned through the town gossip that Martin Schneider, the man she had been supposed to marry, had moved back east after his mine played out. Her father's bank had failed during a financial panic, and he had lost everything. Rebecca felt no satisfaction in this news, only a distant sadness for what might have been if her father had chosen love over money. On a warm spring evening when they were both in their 60s, Harry and Rebecca sat on the porch of their cabin, now expanded and improved over the years, but still the same building Harry had prepared for their wedding night so long ago. Their grandchildren played in the yard, Thomas's 3 boys and Ruth's twin daughters, their laughter carrying on the breeze. "You ever think about that night?" Harry asked suddenly. "When I found you in the snow, sometimes," Rebecca admitted. "Usually when it storms. I remember the cold and the fear and thinking I was going to die, and then I remember you. Your voice telling me to stay awake, the warmth of your coat, the way you promised I would be okay." "I was terrified," Harry confessed. "I thought I had found you too late. I kept talking to you, trying to keep you conscious, but I was not sure you could even hear me. When you finally opened your eyes in that cabin, when I knew you were going to survive, I felt something shift inside me. Like I had been given a gift I did not deserve but would spend the rest of my life being worthy of. You saved my life that night," Rebecca said softly. "But you did more than that. You gave me a future. You gave me love and family and purpose." You gave me everything I had ever dreamed of and so much more. You saved me too, Harry said, taking her hand. I was just going through the motions before I met you. Working, existing, but not really living. You taught me what it means to love someone completely, to build something that matters. To be part of a family. I found you in that storm, but you found me too. Rebecca leaned her head on his shoulder, watching their grandchildren play in the golden light of the setting sun. I would go through it all again, she said. The cold, the fear, all of it, because it led me to you. To this life, to everything that matters. Harry kissed the top of her head. Me too. Every single moment. They sat together in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge, the sounds of the ranch settling for the night around them. Thomas called to his boys, gathering them for the ride back to his own house on the north section of the property. Ruth's daughters waved goodbye, their voices high and sweet in the twilight. Inside the cabin, Rebecca started preparing supper while Harry checked on the horses one last time. It was their routine, familiar and comforting after decades of marriage. As she worked, Rebecca thought about the long journey that had brought her to this place. From her father's house, where she had been treated as a commodity to be traded through the terror of that winter night, to the warmth and security of the life she had built with Harry. She had nearly died in that blizzard. But instead, she had been reborn. Found by a kind cowboy who had wrapped her in his coat and his heart, giving her a second chance at life. And what a life it had been. Full of love and laughter, hard work and joy, children and grandchildren, and a community that mattered. Harry came back inside, stamping the dust from his boots. He crossed to where Rebecca stood at the stove and wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his chest just as he had done 1,000 times before. I love you, he murmured against her hair. I love you too, Rebecca replied, turning in his arms to kiss him properly. Always and forever. They ate their simple supper together, talking about the day's events and making plans for tomorrow. After they cleaned up, they sat by the fire, Harry reading from the newspaper while Rebecca worked on a quilt for Ruth's daughters. The clock ticked peacefully on the mantel and the fire crackled in the grate. When they finally climbed into bed, Harry pulled Rebecca close, her back to his front, his arm draped over her waist. It was how they had slept for nearly 4 decades, and Rebecca could not imagine falling asleep any other way. Thank you, she whispered into the darkness. For what? Harry asked sleepily. For finding me, for saving me, for loving me. Always, Harry promised, his voice already fading toward sleep. From that first moment in the snow until my last breath, always. Rebecca smiled in the darkness, safe and warm in the arms of the man who had given her everything. The winter storm that had nearly killed her had instead brought her to the greatest love of her life. And as she drifted off to sleep, surrounded by the life they had built together, Rebecca knew she would not change a single moment of their story. Not even the terrifying beginning that had led to such a beautiful ending. The years that followed were gentle ones. Harry and Rebecca continued to run the ranch with help from Thomas, who had proven himself a worthy successor. Ruth achieved her dream of becoming a doctor, setting up practice in Santa Fe, but returning often to visit. Their grandchildren grew strong and capable, learning the values of hard work and integrity that Harry and Rebecca had always embodied. When Harry and Rebecca finally passed, within months of each other in their late 70s, it was peacefully, surrounded by family who loved them. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, under the cottonwood trees where they had spoken their wedding vows. The headstones were simple, bearing just their names and dates, but beneath those were words chosen by their children. 2 souls, 1 heart, forever home. The Double T Ranch continued under Thomas's care, then his children's, a testament to the vision and hard work of the two couples who had built it. And sometimes, on winter nights when the snow fell heavy and the wind howled, people swore they could see two figures walking hand in hand through the drifts, a tall cowboy and a dark-haired woman, wrapped together in love that not even death could diminish. The story of how Harry found Rebecca in that blizzard became family legend, passed down through generations. It became a reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best ones. That kindness matters. That love can bloom even in the harshest conditions. And that sometimes, being thrown out into the cold is actually the first step toward finding your way home.